Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining us for this webinar on building lasting confidence, how to break the confidence ceiling. We will wait perhaps a couple of minutes before we begin, just to give everyone a chance to join, some time to join. But in the meantime, go ahead, introduce yourselves in the chat box. Tell us your name, where you're calling in from, and perhaps what brought you here to this class today. But tell us your name and where you're calling in from. I'll open my chat box and let's see where everyone's calling us from. Hi, Kathy, Austin, Texas. Hello, Alana, I see you. Thank you for being here. Hey, Courtney. Work in a male-dominated industry. Confidence is key, totally. We'll get to that.
Hi, Homera, it's Lisa. I'm going to have to leave at 12:30 and I'll watch the rest on your recording.
Yeah, sure thing, Lisa. Hello, Pei. Am I saying your name right? From Singapore? Wow, lovely. We have an international community. What time is it in Singapore? I'm wondering. Alana, Victoria, BC. So nice to see you. 12 a.m. Awesome. So Agota from Colorado. Lovely, lovely ladies. Thank you for being here. So excited to begin. Carol, your position was eliminated about 6 months ago. This topic would help as I explore what my next move is. Hopefully, yes, totally. Lovely. Please introduce yourselves as you come in, ladies. We get a feel of where everyone's joining us from. What's the weather like where all of you are? Hopefully we are getting to the end of winter. Hello from Houston, Hudson Valley, New York, bright and sunny. That's really nice, Sarah. We all need a little more sun. Thank you everyone. Thank you for introducing yourselves. Hello, Bijana. Is that Bijana? It's Biljana from Dubai. Hi. Hi, Carolina from Scotland. So nice to see technology. We're so interconnected now. This is wonderful. From Michigan, cloudy, yes. Weather is amazing in Dubai. It's really nice to hear that. Tunisia, lovely. Aya, thank you for being here. New York, Karen, thank you, ladies. Thank you all for being here. So nice to see so many of you from all over the world. Lovely. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this masterclass on building lasting confidence and how do we break the confidence ceiling. So let's take a couple of breaths, or maybe just one breath, a nice long inhale and a nice long exhale. So we let go of whatever we're carrying in our bodies and our minds. So let's close our eyes together and one nice long inhale. And exhale. So we fully arrive. So what I have planned for you is I want to share a little bit about what confidence is, the research backing of what confidence is, and then I want to share 2 practices with you that you can start implementing right away to feel a little bit more confident. And the reason I want to share a little bit of the research backing is because that is how the growth cycle happens. We get the knowledge, we take action based on that, it feeds back into the knowledge and then action, and then it keeps going. So to get a little feel of where we all are, I have set up a poll for you, and I want to launch this poll. It's got 3 questions, and I would love for you to answer these questions. All of you can see it? Yeah, awesome. So go ahead and answer these questions, and let's see where everyone is with it. Thank you, everyone. So what we have coming in is exactly what I would want to speak to today, because everyone, it's all hovering around the sometimes confident mark. So it's not low confidence. It's not like you don't have confidence, but it is mostly sometimes confidence, sometimes not, and it is affecting almost every area, seeking approval, perfecting, playing small, loss of motivation, and affecting health, relationships, so affecting you at work and outside of work. So thank you. This is wonderful to get a feel of where we all are. End the poll and close this window. So I'll turn on my slides because I did prepare some slides for you. It'll be easier to follow along. So a little bit about who I am and what got me into this line of work, because this directly relates to confidence. Now, a lot of you would already know I'm a women's leadership development coach, and my master's thesis was on flourishing and what helps us actualize our potential. And in particular, I was really interested in finding out what gets in the way of our flourishing. And as you would guess, this took me into the area of confidence. And for my dissertation, what I did was I studied the two types of high confidence. So this naturally took me into the area, into women's leadership, because what I found was that most women in the workplace, competent women, qualified women, as all of you are in the workplace, are not struggling with low confidence. It is not that we need to differentiate between low confidence and high confidence. What they're struggling with is fragile confidence, which is high sometimes and then slips into low confidence other times. And so we'll get into more of that in a bit. And so this distinction between, is it low confidence and high confidence, or is it one of the two types of high confidence, was really important, because that helps us really hone into what we need to build on and what we need to develop and grow. And so I developed a leadership program based on the research, and it has had amazing, really good results, not only post-program, but in longitudinal trials. So after the end of the program, 6-month post, 1-year post, in how women are able to speak up, in their self-awareness, emotional management, in their ability to know their direction, to take charge of their professional growth, and to step up in their careers and leadership. Finally, I have a book coming out early next year. Really excited about that. It's called Goodbye Perfect: How to Stop Pleasing, Proving, and Pushing for Others and Live for Yourself. So that is a little bit of what I do. Would love to know a little bit about what you do. And so I promise this is the last poll that I'm going to ask you. Just tell me a little bit about what you do and where you are, your role at work. And again, there are just a few options here, and let's get a feel of where we all are with this. Leader, manager, graduate, other. Okay, so mostly we have leaders and managers, administration. Awesome. Mostly leaders. Awesome. Awesome. That gives us a great feel of where we are. So leaders, managers, admin, other. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. And I will close this poll as well. So today what we're going to do is I'll talk about what confidence is, what it is not. I'll talk about where it comes from, because this is really important in helping understand why we feel the way we do, and then how to build lasting confidence. And this is where I will share with you the 2 practices that I would like you to start implementing in your lives. And then hopefully we'll open up for a Q&A session. So what is confidence? Confidence is the trust that you have in your ability to deal with whatever comes your way. And this is really important to understand, because what it says is, one, that it's independent of outcome. It is not dependent on having a certain skill set, a certain position, a certain job. It's not dependent on looking a certain way or being in a certain relationship. All those things are nice. They help you feel good. I mean, we all do. But confidence is a stable construct. If those things were taken away from you, you do not lose your sense of confidence in yourself. Secondly, it's a visceral feeling, meaning it lives in your body. So it's not in your head. It can be in your head. It can be a conscious feeling as well, but really it's a visceral feeling. It's subconscious. It lives in your subconscious mind and even deeper in your body, which is really important to understand, because the subconscious mind is the driver of our behaviors. Which is why, sometimes if you don't feel confident, if somebody else says, oh, you totally got this and you can totally do this, it really is not enough for you to take action. And even if you do, it's going to take a lot out of you. It's going to feel gut-wrenching, or you may just perfect and control and just make sure that you're not going to fail if you were to take action. So that is what confidence is. Where does it come from? Confidence comes from our very early experiences with our caregivers. So very early, meaning before the brain develops the capacity for rational thought, which is why it is implicit. And basically in those very early years, before, I would say, the age of 3 or 3.5, when the brain starts developing conscious thought and cognitive capabilities. And so when we grow up in homes where parents provide us with unconditional love, they are non-judgmental, they can celebrate our achievements, our successes, they can really value our qualities, then we develop this sense of trust in ourselves. And when we grow up in more regular homes where there is a mix of some criticism and, certain things that are valued more than others, approval for some things and not for others, where we compared perhaps to a sibling or a neighbor who's more perfect than us and all the rest of it, then we learn, a little child learns, and especially as women, because we are more sensitive by nature, what we learn is that to be worthy of love and attention and appreciation, we have to do something that makes us so. This is called fragile confidence. And one, it is dependent on external validation. So you can feel great when you are doing things that others value or reward. Depending on your early experiences, this external validation could look like approval. It could look like making others happy or doing things that they would like you to do, whether it's your caregivers or other people in your life who are important to you. Or it could be dependent on praise and success. So basically, a certain pay, a certain position, basically the things that society values. So it is dependent on external feedback, and it is explicit knowledge, meaning unlike real confidence, optimal confidence, which lives in your body, this stays in your head. It does not go down into your visceral feelings, which is why you may know that you have a certain skill set. You may know that you've got the qualifications. And this often happens for women as they rise to more senior levels, because they've got years of successes, and they've got years of experience behind them, but they still are holding themselves back. They still find it difficult to take those risks because it is in their explicit minds, and the subconscious drives our behaviors. So these are some of the behaviors that are very common in fragile confidence. And you've already shared them in the poll, but there is avoiding risks, playing small, getting more and more qualified, not reaching out for those opportunities, instead staying in our comfort zones, gathering more qualifications. There is perfection, there's control, there's fixing, seeking approval. There is shame, blame, rumination, and raising the bar on yourself when things don't go well. So when they don't go well, you raise the bar on yourself. You try to prove yourself again. You try to gain back that sense of self-worth that you have. And remember, it's not a conscious feeling. You just engage in these behaviors. If these behaviors speak to you, it doesn't matter what you think you know in your subconscious mind. It's reflected in the behaviors. And when things do go well, your happiness is short-lived. And what you get is either a longing for more praise or the feelings of the imposter syndrome, that, because there's a mismatch between what you explicitly have felt, the success or the praise, and what you implicitly know. So because of that mismatch, you experience the imposter syndrome, and you feel now and the dread of now having to do the same again. Now, in the workplace, for women in the workplace, this is actually a very slippery slope. Because when our confidence is dependent on external validation, the external validation becomes fewer and fewer the higher we rise in our careers and the more we advance in age. One, there is the double bind. Almost every woman after a certain level has experienced that, the double bind between likability and competence. Competent women are seen as aggressive, brash. Likable women are seen as not executive material. Either way, they are held back. There is the double burden of what we call motherhood and management, so caregiving responsibilities and now managing a growing team. And the pandemic showed us how this double burden really affects women's confidence with all the different hats that we were juggling. There is expectations. Women are held to higher expectations, especially women of color. And these are external expectations. There are also internal expectations that we have on ourselves as a result of fragile confidence. There's criticism. We all know that a lot of qualities that are admired in men, valued in men, rewarded in men are criticized in women. So there's external criticism. There's also internal criticism. As women, we are wired to be more critical of ourselves because we've always been in caregiving roles. It's not only our own well-being that's at stake, but the well-being of little kids and our tribes. I mean, I'm talking about evolutionary reasons that we are wired to be more critical, especially if we also grow up in homes where we receive more than our fair share of criticism. And then there's the fact that we live in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous, where we can do all that we can, but even so, there is no guarantee that we can do everything we can, but still end up without a job, still end up with a lien on the house, still end up with adult kids living in the basement. And if our confidence is dependent on external validation, then we really begin to lose confidence in ourselves. And just lately, I was reading this Forbes survey 2022 that says that 1 in 2 women is not feeling confident in the workplace. That's a huge number. It's a huge number. And so if we are to help women feel confident again, we need to build the right kind of confidence, which is called optimal confidence. And so optimal confidence has got 4 key components. And in the leadership program that I've developed, we go through each one of these 4 components with a 2-pronged approach. So there is the outer work, where we do the work of that component through evidence-based practices. And then there's the inner work that we need to do when challenges come up. Because the reality is that we are hardwired to deal with our challenges. We are hardwired to learn and grow through our challenges, to transform through our challenges. And when that fails to happen, it is largely because we lack the inner nurturance that develops through those early experiences. What we do is we add judgment to pain, whether it's through the inner critic, whether it's through the inner victim, but that's what we end up doing. And so it is a mix of the outer work and the inner work. And so today, the two practices that I want to share with you are one of the outer work and one of the inner work and one of the components. So ready? So the first practice is about taking courageous action. And courage, most of you would likely know, is not an absence of fear. Generally, this is the kind of messaging we get in society, that if you're courageous, you just go out there trailblazing. It's not that. Courage is really taking action with fear by your side, with fear in tow, taking action despite the fear. As they say, fearlessness is not a strategy. Fearing less is a strategy. So the first thing we need to do is recognize fear. And there are two reasons this is really important. One, fear is our greatest survival mechanism. It has been around for millennia. And when it evolved, it was to help us survive in actual danger. We were afraid for our physical survival. Now it is not our physical survival, but our psychological survival. And so fear has become really good at camouflaging itself. And secondly, when we have fragile confidence, what we are doing is we're trying to protect something unworthy deep inside, whether we know it or not. And so fear will be loud. And so fear tries all sorts of different mechanisms. And I want to share some of the common ones with you. And I would love for you to share which one of these feels you can relate with. Let me open my chat here so that I can see what's coming in. Yeah, so the different strategies are, well, one is fear can be harsh and mean. That's what we generally call the inner critic. Almost all of us can recognize that. Fear can also show up as catastrophizing. So just, thinking about the worst case scenario, this is going to be terrible. And it creates such a hue and cry about it that sometimes we just get caught up in it and we don't think too clearly. So when you find yourself catastrophizing, know that it is fear talking. It can also show up as overgeneralizing. So supposing you took action once and it didn't go that well, that is all that you'll be able to think about. It may not have been even have been action that you took. It could have been action that somebody else took, but that is all that fear will keep harping on about. It also shows up as black and white thinking. So either it's the best or it's the worst. And because bad always is stronger than good in the human brain, it will focus on what's bad. It can sound like an advisor. And this is one that we need to be very careful of because it will justify you not taking action. And that is something that the human brain does really well. In fact, they say that logic and reason is slave to passion. We've already decided on the action, and then we use logic and reason to justify that. So it can sound like an advisor. It can say, oh, this opportunity is not good at all because the kids are still little or something of that sort. And maybe there is some truth to that. But the thing about fear is it does not want dialogue. The kids are too little, and that means end of the story. Instead of the kids are too little, let's try and find a way of doing this, but in a different way. It can also show up as blanket statements. You're not really this good at something or the other. And that's a blanket statement. It's as though it's a fact and there's no argument about it. It's not interested in listening. And that's also very important for you to recognize. So supposing fear comes up with something and you try to challenge that, it'll just come up with another reason, and you challenge that and it'll come up with another reason. It's like, those Energizer bunnies. I remember that battery, I forget which battery it was, and there was an Energizer bunny in the ad, and it would just keep going and going and going. And that's kind of how fear can sound. And it is irrational. And that is why they all also say of fear that sometimes it really helps you write it down. Write down what you're saying to yourself or speak it out with somebody, because when you do, you realize how irrational it is, and fear loses its power when you do that. So would love to know, which of these do you resonate with? Which of these do you think happens for you? when you're stepping out to take some action, when you would want to do something, reach out for an opportunity, take a risk, speak up, have a conversation, anything that feels courageous for you, how does fear try and stop you? How does it show up for you? And please go ahead and share that in the chat box. Which ones do you relate with? Is it more like the justifications? Is it more like just the harshness? Let me get my chat box sorted a little bit here. Catastrophizing, harsh and mean, like an advisor. Yeah. Catastrophizing sounds like you. Worst case scenarios. Frozen, unable to see how to move forward. Courtney, thank you for bringing that up, because the fight-flight response is actually the fight-flight-freeze response. And a lot of us, especially those of us who experience fear more, can go into the freeze response when we think about, that's why we blank out, for example, before we're going to have a conversation. We've gone into the freeze response. And so we will talk about different ways to work with that. Blanket statements, justifying not doing anything. Yes, exactly. So how do we work with fear? How do we manage that fear? And I want to share, Elena, inner critic, exactly. So it is more the criticizing, the loud voice. And sometimes I say when we have a loud inner critic, sometimes it's easier to manage that because at least we can recognize it. And for those of us who justify our fears, it's always harder to work with that. And that takes a deeper level of self-awareness to say, oh, is that justification? Or is that the truth? And so that takes deeper work. Managing fear. So I want to share 4 pathways of managing fear. And the first 2 that I will share with you are what I particularly like in the moment of fear. So what Brené Brown would say, when you're in the arena, you're just in the moment of having the conversation, you're already seated next to your boss, for example, or you already, standing there about to give the presentation. So body-based ways of working through the fear are really good. And the best is the breath. And it's so good because our entire body has already gone into fight, flight, or freeze. And none of those mechanisms that now the body is involved in are under our control. We cannot slow our heart rate. We cannot stop the flow of blood to our limbs. We cannot stop the flow of blood away from our brains. Everything, we cannot stop the flow of all the hormones in our body. But the only thing that we can control is our breath. It is fast and it's shallow because it's getting us ready to fight or flee. But when we slow down that breath, then we actually send the body the message that there's really nothing to be afraid of. And that then helps everything else regulate itself. So the breath is really, really important as a body-based way to help us feel less fearful. Other body-based ways that obviously you can't practice when you're in the arena, but other body-based ways, if you're just feeling a lot of fear, is movement. Because remember, all the blood has flown through to your limbs, so you can dance out the fear. You can go for a jog, you can go for a hike, you can do anything to release that energy, to release that pent-up fearful energy from yourself. Another way is the emotions pathway. And the emotions pathway is also really good when you are in the arena because all the hormones are already there in your body. It's really difficult to bring that surge down. So your job is just to channel it in the right direction because you can. You need all those emotions to take action. You need all those hormones to take action. So your job is to channel them in the right direction. And you can do that through mantras. You can say to yourself, I totally got this. You go, girl. Whatever works for you. You can say, this is exciting. This is going to be fun. Or, whatever. This is going to make a huge difference. This is exciting me. Whatever it is for you, mantras help. You can also use the power of the imagination. And remember, we were talking just a minute ago about catastrophization, how fear uses imagination to get us really scared. Well, we can use imagination to our advantage. We can imagine that fear is a person and we can walk it out the door. We can literally mentally imagine we're holding it by the hand and saying, come fear, let's go out because you're not needed right now. And we can invite another emotion in that's helpful, that we think would help us. Like we can invite in, let's say, courage. We can invite in curiosity. We can invite in love. Another one that I love is called flipping the switch. So you've switched on the switch of fear has been turned on. You basically flip the switch to courage. Just mentally say, okay, flip the switch, now I'm courageous. We can totally do these things. You know, sometimes they feel strange, but try them out. They do work. They do work. I mean, you know, we have no qualm saying horrible things to ourselves all the time and getting ourselves all wound up and afraid. Well, we can try the same techniques to feel calmer, to feel more courageous, but do it intentionally. The third pathway that I want to share is the mind pathway. And this one's really good if the action that you want to take, that you're afraid to take, is perhaps a few hours away or the next day or perhaps down the road, the next week or whatever, because you still have blood flowing through your brain. You still have a lot of your reasoning capabilities with you, which tend to vanish when you're in the arena. So the mind pathway is really about threat reappraisal. It is about reappraising. It is about having a dialogue with the fear and trying to understand what it is really afraid of. And so a couple of questions that work really well that you may want to ask yourself are, one, what are you trying to protect me from? Because the fear is trying to protect you from something. You always have to know that. Its purpose is to protect you. All it wants is your survival. It really doesn't care about your thriving or your flourishing, but it does want to make sure you survive. So you ask it, what are you trying to protect me from? You can also ask another amazing question is, what is the story that you're telling me? Because it is telling you a story. Catastrophization is a story. And then you can reappraise that, meaning you can try and have a dialogue with it. You can ask, what is the evidence around that? So if it is saying, if you take that proposal to your boss, she will surely reject it, for example. You can ask it, what is the proof? You can ask it, you can say something like, if she rejects it, I can always ask her what is the reason for that and work together to see what's a better proposal that she would want to accept that would appeal to her. You can always reappraise that and see other things and find different ways to work with it. And the fourth pathway is the action pathway. And the action pathway, basically actions can be broken down into two. They are protective actions and they are proceeding actions. So protective actions are, because remember, fear does serve a purpose. When you have a conversation with it, you may realize that it's telling you something important that you do need to pay attention to. If you're really afraid about that presentation happening tomorrow, maybe it's reminding you that you haven't prepared enough for it, right? So that is protective action. You spend a little more time, you set aside an hour to prepare for it. Proceeding action is when that fear is not justified and you're going to proceed regardless. And what's important in proceeding actions is that they are small. They need to be small. That's the only way you can do it. It's like literally you have to think of fear like a little child, like a little toddler throwing a tantrum. And you want to go somewhere and that toddler's just digging their feet in the ground and saying, I'm not coming, I'm not coming, I'm not coming. And so what would the parent do? Honey, just 2 steps, honey. You know, just the smallest little thing, right? So that is what you do, because that also calms the fear. That calms the fear down. And then 2 steps, and then 2 more steps, and then 2 more steps. And the more steps you take, the more the fear will go back into the back seat. Okay, so these are different pathways of managing fear. The first two pathways work really well in the moment. The other two pathways work really well when you have more time, but the action pathway can be for either one of them. Again, see which one works for you. And sometimes it's not just one, sometimes it's a mix of many. The breath, for example, we usually need the breath before we engage with anything else. And that breath work can also be done with compassion. If you're afraid, you need a little bit of compassion. That inner critic is loud, it's spewing hatred in your ear. You don't need to hear that. You can bring some compassion to yourself and say, it's okay, it's okay. I'm calm, I'm here with you. It's okay, we'll manage this together. It's nice to say nice things to ourselves. We don't do that often enough. Okay, so this is what helps you take courageous action. The second strategy that I want to share with you is once you've taken that action, how do you turn that into lasting confidence? And this one I want to share with you because I think this is a huge missed opportunity for women for two key reasons. We turn those moments into lasting confidence by celebration, by really noticing them and talking about them and celebrating them. And women don't do that often enough. Because one, we may have grown up in homes where, caregivers generally didn't celebrate our accomplishments. Could have been for very real reasons. Maybe they would have thought, oh, if we were to celebrate, well, maybe they'll get too big-headed. Maybe, they won't try as hard. So, their reasons could have been true to them, but they cause us a lot of harm because we don't learn how to celebrate ourselves. We also live in societies where women are burdened with this needless task of being modest, and we are not taught how to celebrate our successes. It's considered to be unfeminine a lot of the times, which is, again, it is causing us a lot of harm. Three main things that it is doing to us. One, it is what leads to the imposter syndrome, because when we don't celebrate ourselves, that success, that courageous action does not sink into our implicit memory. It does not take long for something to sink into our implicit memory, but we have to sit with it. We have to stay with it. We have to get excited about it because that is what releases dopamine and helps it go down in our memory and want us to repeat that action. So by not celebrating, we are encouraging the imposter syndrome. By not celebrating, we are also not seeing that bigger version of ourselves and who we can possibly be. And if we can't see that bigger version of ourselves, it's so much harder to step into that. And thirdly, when we don't celebrate ourselves, we don't give other women permission to do that either. And so collectively, we stay small, right? And so that's not a good thing at all. And so I want to first share quickly a few of the ways that we don't celebrate ourselves, common ones. One is we focus on the failure. So after we take this courageous action, instead of thinking about what went well, we focus on what didn't go well. We get hung up on that. And there is obviously the brain is more, the bad always hangs on longer in the brain. And there is reasoning for that. But we need to focus intentionally on things that went well. So we focus on failure. We minimize the good. That's something else we do, whether it is out of modesty or whatever. We also give away all credit. And that could be partly our relational nature as women. But again, it's awesome to give away credit, but not give away all credit. We certainly played a role in the success happening, in the courageous action. We need to take that in. And then there is also, we don't talk about it. And we don't talk about it, maybe because we're afraid that if we talk about it, we'll find out something that we didn't know hadn't gone well. So we're just afraid to tread there. Or it could be any reason. We just think it wouldn't be nice. It would not make other people feel good. Whatever the reason is, these are all different ways that we struggle with celebrating our successes, even if they aren't outright successes, but we don't celebrate the fact that we did show up, that we did take that courageous action despite the fear. And it's really important to do that. So again, I would love for you to share in the chat, which one of these do you think you tend to do? Once you've taken courageous action, once something has gone well, or even if it hasn't gone perfectly, that is not the point. What do you tend to do? You don't talk about it, focus on failure, minimize the good, don't talk about it. Yeah. Focus on failure. Give away credit, focus on failure. Yeah, focus on failure. Focus on failure. Yeah, focus on failure again. See, we are wired to focus on failure. So a lot of the things we have to remember that a lot of the things we do is the way we're wired. And that wiring was made for our survival. It is not enough to help us flourish. So that is where we have to take intentional action to go against that wiring when it's not helping us and take that action, right? So even if we just leave it to our wiring, we're really not going to get far with that. We certainly won't be able to actualize our full potential. So how do we celebrate without becoming totally obnoxious? Because nobody wants to do that. How do we celebrate? This is what I want to share with you is called active constructive responding, and it's taken from Shelley Gable's work, which is about how do we celebrate somebody else's good news. Because the way we build trust with each other is not only in how we're with them through their bad news, but how we celebrate their good news. And this again is a huge missed opportunity in our relationships, but we're also going to apply it to ourselves. So first, let me walk you through it in our relationships, and then I'll talk about how we apply it to ourselves. So the best form of responding when somebody shares their good news with us is called active constructive. It is when we show genuine interest and when we amplify the experience for them. So your partner walks in and they say, oh, my boss called in today and they said that I can get that promotion that I really wanted. And you say, oh, wow, this is just such awesome news. I'm so excited for you. Tell me more. Tell me more. How did it happen? Did they call you in? What happened when you went in there? What did they ask? What did you say? How did it feel saying that? And then what? Wow, that sounds courageous. How did it feel? Etc. etc. What you're doing is you're pulling out from them the strengths that they used. You're asking them, what does this mean? What do they see themselves doing in this new role so that they begin to see this bigger version of themselves? You're transforming them through the questions that you're asking. This is the highest form of responding. Passive constructive is when you say, give understated support, which is, I think, what most of us tend to do, which is like, oh, that's awesome. And then the conversation stalls. That's pretty much it. Oh, that's awesome. So glad, or something of that sort. Your child comes up with some good news and you say, that's lovely, honey. And then that's kind of the end of it. Then there's passive destructive, which is you just totally ignore the event altogether. And you just talk about something else completely. And then there's active destructive, where you actually start raising alarm about that. You say, oh my God, a promotion. Now this means you won't have any time for the kids. You already barely have time for the family, or something of that sort. So these are the 4 forms of responding, and active constructive is by far the best. And so I want you to think of which one of these you use for yourself. So when you do something well, when you take a stand, when you show a moment of courage, when you have a success, do you take genuine interest and do you celebrate that? And you say, wow, I'm so happy. This is such great news. This just went so well. I'm so glad of the way I gave that presentation. And it really helped that I did your strengths. And the fact that I prepared well was really good. And I could see the audience was so engaged. And I think they walked away with a lot of really good strategies. And I can really see myself doing more of this. I can really see the impact it's having on people and really start seeing yourself in that bigger light. Do you do that? Or do you just, oopsies, let's go back. Do you give yourself understated support, which is like, oh yeah, that went well, and then that's the end of it? Or is it passive destructive, as in just not wanting to talk about it? A lot of you shared that as well, totally, not ignoring it, let me not think back to it. Or do you actually go the active destructive way, which is a lot of the imposter syndrome, which is, oh my God, I mean, that went well, but big deal, now I have to do that again. And this feels so scary. How will I ever redo that performance? That was a total fluke. And now you're actively destroying yourself and making yourself totally afraid about the next time. Right? So really knowing that all of these three, I mean, needless to say, active destructive is by far the worst, but passive destructive or passive constructive are really not helping us much at all. It is active constructive that helps those feelings sink down into our long-term memory to build lasting confidence. Really important to know that. So in the program, what we do is we build what's called an inner cheerleader. And it is one of the 4 presences that we build through the program. And the inner cheerleader shows up in this way. We like to use an acronym that's called SING. It's easy to remember because it's about singing your praises. And it's SING because the first thing is you see what went well. You see, you notice it, you don't ignore it. So many of us end our days at work or just generally days without even noticing what went well that day. We just wrap up work and then just get on to the next thing without really reflecting, what did I really do today that I feel really proud about? So the first thing is to see. The second thing is to inflate it, to really say, oh my God, that went so well. I'm so happy. I'm so proud of myself. Give yourself a high five. I mean, really get the dopamine flowing, because when you do, your body wants to repeat that behavior. Dopamine makes us want to repeat the behavior, which is why it's really important to celebrate it, to get excited, to high-five yourself. And then, I mean, you're doing it to yourself. It's not like, you're running around the house doing it or your office. The third is, the N is for nurture. So you really take that and you start having that conversation with yourself. Okay, what helped me do that? What were the strengths that I used? What were the qualities? What were some of the things that I did that really helped this go so well? And what could this lead to? What could this grow into? So have those kinds of conversations. And the G is for gratitude, because again, all our achievements, whether we recognize it or not, is on the shoulders of many other people as well. So who are all the people I need to be grateful for? What were the circumstances I need to be grateful for? So really important to have that gratitude aspect as well. So that is kind of the way we get to be our own inner cheerleaders. And so, like I said, the inner cheerleader work is one of the many presences that we build in the program, one of the 4 key presences that we build in the program that help us with that inner nurturance that we spoke about, that is so critical to confidence and the key differentiator between fragile confidence and optimal confidence. And this is one of the things that really differentiates our work with almost everything that's out there. And I want to share this quote with you because this really speaks to the essence of it. It's a beautiful quote. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. Right? And for us human beings, that environment is really the way we relate to ourselves. Because if you think about it, you are the one person with whom you spend the most time. You're constantly talking to yourself. You're constantly relating to yourself. And even if the external environment is conducive to your growth, our brains are wired to reject everything that is not aligned with our internal stories. So it's really important to pay attention to that inner environment. And, there's a concept in psychology that is called entelechy, and it is about the potential in every living organism to actualize. And it exists in the seed, the acorn seed that grows into an oak tree if it gets the right environment. And when it doesn't, it either doesn't grow, or it grows, if it gets a limited form of environment, it grows into a tiny tree, a bonsai tree. Right? And fragile confidence is like that bonsai tree. It's that smaller version of you. It is you not meeting your full potential. And for us as human beings, not doing that comes with regrets. It comes with resentments. It comes with disappointments. It comes with depression. It comes with psychological disorders because, as Abraham Maslow has said, what one can be, one must be. It's really important to pay attention to that. So with that, wonderful ladies, please share one thing that you're walking away with today, one practice perhaps that you will start implementing, one way that you'll start relating to yourself, one thing that you plan to do differently going forward, just one small thing, just one small action that you think you will be taking differently going forward from here. G part, it's not song, it's sing, and the G is gratitude. Karen, you love the idea of the sing practice? Yes, me too. I mean, you know, with all our presences, there are 4 presences. Like I said, we have an acronym that breaks it down, because sometimes in that moment, you need an acronym. You need a step-by-step to guide you. Give yourself permission to celebrate. Exactly, Kenya. Breathing better. Brilliant. Using sing before you go to sleep every night. This is beautiful, Caroline. Do that, because, you know, they say how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. I think that's Annie Dillard. And yeah, when at the end of the day, you can think of all the wonderful things you did, and you can take that in. That is kind of the legacy that you leave behind. That is how you reflect back on your life. Celebrate every day, celebrate inner cheerleader, celebrating. I'm so glad the inner cheerleader work has stayed with you. Celebrate little things. Yes. The N was nurture, Afia. It's nurture. Encourage others to celebrate. Exactly. I am really glad the idea of celebrating is staying with you. Inner cheerleader. Exactly. Be your inner cheerleaders. Be your inner cheerleaders. Because, you know, sometimes when we are not inner cheerleaders to ourselves, no amount of praise can feel enough. You like the sing idea, mind appraisal? Exactly. What are you trying to protect me from? I love that question as well. And so, ladies, if anyone of you wants to take this work further, whether it is in your own individual development or leadership development, or whether you want to bring any of this work to your team, to your organization, please get in touch. The email address is right here on your screen. Somebody will get back to you to understand what exactly you're looking for and how we can best support you by bringing the work to your organization or to you individually in different ways. It's also in the chat box. Thank you, Miral, for that. And with that, I'd love to open up for Q&A. We still have 8 to 10 minutes. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask them. Would love for you to share them in the Q&A box. Do we have the Q&A box here or in the chat? I think Miral is here to watch over the chat box, or feel free to raise your hand and we can have a live Q&A as well. Thank you. Thank you. C. Sykes. Thank you. I'm so glad that that helped. Any questions at all? I would love to answer them. Anything that's on your mind, anything that you want to talk through, walk through, feel free, raise your hand, share it in the chat box. You're welcome, Carol. You're welcome. Miral, can you see if anyone has raised their hand, if anyone has a question?
I'll let you know if they do.
Please do. Ter has a question. Mimi, can you read that out? The chat is moving really fast.
Yeah, for sure. So what if nothing went well in our actions?
Okay, that's a common one too. So that's dare, right?
Yeah.
Dare,
Yes.
that can, so that I would say, first of all, you have to see, did nothing go well? Because it is very rare that nothing at all went well. Even if it was a 1 out of 10, you first need to celebrate the 1. There's another model that we sometimes use, which is called the grow model. The G is for great. So ask yourself what went great. Even if it was that 1 out of 10, you first have to celebrate the 1. Then you ask yourself, where is there room for improvement? The R is for room for improvement. And then the O is, what will I optimize? What will I do less of? What will I do more of? So basically, you're not adding judgment to your pain. You take judgment out of the whole situation. So first you celebrate what went great. Where is there room for development? What will I optimize?
Yuri also has her hand up.
Mimi, you can unmute her and then we can, Yuri, would you like to come turn your video on, or if this is fine too, would be nice to see your face.
Yuri, I've asked you to unmute. Hamira, while we wait for her, a lot of people are asking if you can reiterate the SING acronym, what it stands for.
Yes, yeah. So the S is for C. So for C, what went well, right? And that again, that answers a little bit of your question as well. Nothing went well is very rare. At least see what went well. Even the fact that you showed up, that went well. So the first is C. The second is inflate. So, really get excited about it, inflate it. Wow, that was great. Get the enthusiasm flowing. The N is for nurture, so related to all the great qualities that happen and what you see yourself becoming through it. And then the G is for gratitude. Yuri's question, let me see. I'm having a bit of a challenge with my chat box. So my mouse.
Yuri's question is, how does the quote relate to changing ourselves to become better for our lives?
Which quote again was that? Maslow's quote, or?
I think it's Maslow's quote.
Okay. Mimi, can we unmute Yuri?
I asked her to unmute, but she's unmuted now, I think.
Okay. Yes, Yuri.
Hi. My question was for the course when I was doing.
Yuri, I can't hear you very, very well.
Oh. Are you able to hear me now?
A little bit better, yeah.
Okay. The quote of when a flower doesn't bloom,
Yeah.
fix the environment in which it grows,
Yes.
and not the flower itself. I was wondering how that relates to like working on internally on ourselves in order to make our lives better rather than changing the surrounding which we live. How does that relate with that?
Yuri, again, I can't hear you very well, but I think I get the gist of your question. It relates to our lives because the environment that we're talking about is our inner environment. How we talk to ourselves, how we relate to ourselves, how we celebrate ourselves, how we guide ourselves, how we take care of ourselves, how we are with ourselves when we struggle, how we're with ourselves when we celebrate, all these different aspects of who we are with ourselves. A lot of that is that a little child learns to relate to themselves through the ways that they were related to in their very early years. And again, a lot of other factors after that as well. But the inner environment may have been fine. Some level of fragile confidence has always existed. And it may have been fine in another era, but when our challenges are so high and when our aspirations are so high as well, we really need to optimize that inner environment. We really need to develop optimal confidence to become who we want to become, to grow into that full potential. Thank you. Mimi, there's a question from Sarah. I think Dara just raised it.
So Sarah's asking how to limit the collateral damage from toxic family members.
Yes, so the first question would be, are they still around? Can you distance yourself from them? Because that's an important one. If you can, you have to remember that if you have toxic people around you who are not treating you and who are not able to see you as a person, as an individual, as a human being with emotions, with strengths, who are not able to see you in your full potential, then it is on you to protect yourself, right? Healthy relationships are those where we support each other, where we can see the magic in the other person, we can see the glory in ourselves and in the other person, and we are committed to bringing it out in ourselves and in the other person. Those are healthy relationships. When you lack that in a relationship, then it's really important that you protect yourself from that. So the question is, can you do that? I mean, that is one of the reasons that little children struggle when they're not in the right environment, because they're unable to protect themselves. So Mimi, would you see if there's any other question? We'll get to that. I do want to honor everyone's time. It is the top of the hour. It is also a weekday. So if any one of you needs to go, you're totally... Is
Those
there
are all
any other
questions.
Okay. Okay, Mimi, thank you so much. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. This was lovely. Thank you for your sharing. I really appreciate that. And all of you, have a wonderful day. Stay well, stay safe, and most importantly, be good to yourself. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Thank you all.